So in this session, we're going to look at new development features in PowerBuilder 2025. Not what's changed in the IDE, what's changed in the code you can write. So first we have a disclaimer. Let's look at the session agenda. So the PBC has now, the features of PBC have now been integrated into PBAutoBuild. So you can use PBAutoBuild to do your compiles. There's now support for high DPI. There's now support for connecting to PostgreSQL with an ADO.NET driver rather than ODBC. We've upgraded to .NET 8 rather than .NET 6 and removed the dependency on the .NET framework. The SMTP client now supports a number of other various authentication types. Themes have been enhanced. Tab view has been enhanced. There are some enhancements to the data window. There's some source control enhancements. There's some enhancements to the PDF builder. There's enhancements with regard to supporting multiple displays. And there's a placeholder property now for the edit mask and a multi-line edit. This is in addition to the single line edit, which there was already one for. And there have been some changes to the installer. And finally, we're going to look at discontinued and obsolete features. So first, a little bit about me. I've been using PowerBuilder since about 1.0b, so quite a while. In addition to PowerBuilder, my skills are in Oracle PL/SQL, Java, C#, and C++. And this is a little bit about the company I work for. So let's look at integrating PBC into PBAutoBuild. So as I mentioned, the features of the PBC executable have now been integrated into PBAutoBuild. So what you can do with the PBC, there were some parameters you could pass into it. That's now supported by PBAutoBuild. You just put a /PBC parameter after the PBAutoBuild on the execution line, and then add the parameters after that. And then PBAutoBuild will just use those parameters just like PBC would. And now for PowerServer and Power Client projects, PBAutoBuild now supports a deploy-only option. So if you've already compiled the object and you just want to redeploy it, you can use the /deploy parameter to skip recompiling the project again. So we're going to take a little demo of integrating PBC into PBAutoBuild. So we're going to look at the PBC options for PBAutoBuild now. And so the place I go to get the PBC options is the project painter. It's down here in the bottom. And you notice that they've changed this now. It says you can run PBAutoBuild, and they've put PBC in the /PBC in the beginning of the text. So you can just paste that right in. So I'm going to copy that. Here I've got a command line, and just there's no smoke and mirrors going on. This is the PFC demo app, and there's the PFC library folder. You see there's no pibbles in it. So I'll go here to PBAutoBuild, and I'll paste in the arguments. And this happens to be the solution format. This works equally as well with the workspace format. And the only difference being that the solution format, at least in this case, is like 4 times faster. So we don't have to sit around and watch this build for a while. I thought I would use the solution format. So this will take a little over a minute. But you can see it's doing the build just like if you'd done with PBC, except now you're doing it with PBAutoBuild. Okay. It's stage 3 there. Stage 4. Notice the 3 and the 4 that come after the normal. A couple of warnings there about XLS FOP. It's doing some linking and should be done here any second. Okay, it's done. So let's go back and look at there's the PBDs created, dropped into. Now this is the annoying piece still. Doesn't matter really where you run that PBAutoBuild from. The PBDs get dropped into the same folder that the pibbles are at, or in this case, the pibble folders, because that's what's in the new solution. These are actually folders. Anyway, so that is using PBAutoBuild with the /PBC flag now. So that was incorporating the PFC options into PBAutoBuild. Now we're going to look at supporting high DPI. So Windows has basically 5 different levels of DPI awareness that you can set your application to. First one is DPI unaware. That's kind of the default mode. That's the way PowerBuilder has worked up through 2022, which means that when it's on a high DPI monitor, it doesn't attempt to adjust its appearance at all, and that sometimes has some unpleasant results. The second option is what's called system DPI awareness. That means the application will adjust initially for the DPI of the monitor, of the primary monitor, but after that, it doesn't respond to any DPI changes. Another option is what's called per monitor version 1 DPI awareness. So in this case, the application can respond to DPI changes, but in a very limited mode. Then there's per monitor version 2 DPI awareness. This is where the application fully responds to changes in the DPI. And this is the recommended setting. This is what PowerBuilder 2025 has really been optimized to handle. And then lastly, there is the DPI unaware GDI scaled mode, which instead of attempting to adjust the appearance of the application through DPI, does it through GDI scaling. So that's another option. And this can be set via the new application object properties or that are in PowerBuilder 2025, or in any version of PowerBuilder. This could be done through Windows API calls or through a manifest file. It's just a little bit more work to do it through those other 2 options. So if you want to look to kind of dig in a little bit, I briefly explained what those 5 different options are, but I'm giving you some links here where you can go in and pursue it further if you want, particularly if you're trying to understand what DPI setting you want to set your application to. So this first one covers the first 4 of those DPI awarenesses I talked about. That particular document doesn't go into GDI scaling, which is why I included that 3rd link. So you can see what that particular option does. And then lastly, if you wanted to see how you could set it through application manifest, I provided a link for that. Not that you're going to want to do that. Chances are you're probably going to want to just use the options that are now available in PowerBuilder 2025. So, as I alluded to earlier, there's a new application property, high DPI mode, that you can set. You can either do it through a property on the application object, or there is a function you can called set high DPI mode that you can do it from script. The values, now you'll notice here, the values are actually 6, although the number of DPI modes is 5. That's because the first 2 options are pretty much the same thing, none and DPI unaware. You take a PowerBuilder 2022 application or prior and you migrate it to PowerBuilder 2025, and it will default to 0. It will continue to be DPI unaware. This is not something that is automatically applied when you migrate the application to 2025. You need to decide whether or not you want to turn this particular feature on and determine what level you want to set it to for each of your applications. So basically, both of those options are DPI unaware. Then you've got the system awareness, per monitor version 2, and the DPI unaware GDI scaled that I referred to in the first slide in this session. What I would really recommend is that you only look at 2 of these options, none and per monitor version 2. So either don't try to scale, or if you're going to scale, do it the right way. Go straight to per monitor version 2. So if, for instance, if you have a manifest file that's trying to set the DPI mode, and you're trying to do it through the Windows API, and you're trying to do it through the application property, the application property will take precedence, just so you know that. If the setting is anything other than none, that setting will apply and no other later setting will take effect, the manifest file of the Windows API. If you want to set the mode via the object property in script using that set high DPI mode method, you must set the application property to none. Otherwise, the application property will override what you're trying to do in the script. Either way, if you set it using the script, or, well, if you're trying to set it through the script, you're setting it during the application property, it's already set when you try to open up the application. If you try to do it in script, you got to do it before a window is opened in the application. Otherwise, it will no longer have any effect. And the feature will only work in Windows 10 version 1703 or later, or Windows Server 2016 or later. And of course, when I say Windows 7, I don't know where I'm going there. Windows 10, when I say Windows 10 version 1703 or later, I'm including Windows 11 in that. So work on all your Windows 11 versions. If you're still back on Windows 10, it needs to be version 1703 or higher. Otherwise, it just won't work. It'll default to PowerBuilder 2022 behavior, which is not to attempt to scale at all. And then lastly, if you're running the application from the IDE, you're not really going to see this take effect. It only works when the application's been compiled to an executable. One thing, though, I mentioned that you only care about 2 of these settings. If you create a new application in PowerBuilder, it will automatically, by default, set it to option 4, per monitor version 2. If you upgrade a PowerBuilder application from 2022 or earlier, it'll be set to none. And there is the option in the application properties window. And like I said, really, the only 2 options you want to look at are none or 4, 0 or 4. Okay. When you use per monitor version 2, one of the things that helps your application adjust to the DPI changes is the fact that there is a Windows message that will be sent to your main application window whenever there is a DPI change. So there's a before event, there's an after event, and then there's a DPI changed event. So it's the middle one there you actually care about, because that's sent. These are sent to the children of the top level window. Where you really want to kind of deal with it, I think, is by the top level window of the application, monitoring for the WM DPI changed event. Now, unfortunately, at least currently, there aren't PBM_ versions of these events. So what you'll need to do, if you want to respond to this scaling notification, DPI change notification, is capture them in the other event. And I showed that in the demo. So not that we care about this first 2 events, but just for information, the WParam and LParam values that are sent to those 2 events have no meaning. They're always 0. But here's the important part. For the WM DPI changed event, those parameters have meaning. For the WParam, the high word is the new DPI for the x-axis, and the low word is, in other words, the WParam is a long, you split it in half. The top half is the y-axis DPI, and the low half is the x-axis DPI. Now for Windows, which is where we're at, those 2 values are always the same. You don't have a different DPI setting on different axes on Windows. And then LParam is Windows recommending to you the new location and size for the top level window based on the new DPI setting. So what you can do is read that value and go ahead and move and resize your window to what Windows recommends. So as I mentioned, like I said, there's no PBM_event that maps to these yet. So what we'll do in my code sample here is in my other event, I check the message number, and only for the WM_DPI change do I actually do something, which is I've got a function there that responds to a DPI change for the application. So this is me decoding the parameters. So as I indicated, the WParam is a long that then gets split into two pieces, which is the X and Y DPI settings. So I've created a function called convert number to binary string, split that in half, and then converted those strings back into numbers. And that gives me the regular decimal value of both of those. And then what I'm doing is taking the rect parameter. It's what basically the LParam is a pointer to the rect. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that into memory and map it to a structure that has the 4 separate values, so that in PowerBuilder I can actually read what those values are. And here I'm actually doing a resize based on the rect that was passed to me, indicating what Windows recommends I set the window size to. So let's go ahead and take a look at the demo. So what I've got here for demoing high DPI, I've actually got 2 applications that refer to the same common library here. So this common library has a window in it. And what I'm doing in the application objects is in the one that's got no DPI awareness, I'm leaving the DPI awareness set to none. And then the one where it's high, I've got it set to 4. Okay? So the per monitor version 2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at how that works first, and then we're going to look at some code I developed for responding dynamically to DPI changes. So let's just look first at how this works. So here's the application. There's the no DPI awareness one, the high DPI awareness one. They did open up just slightly different sizes here on this monitor, and then when I go, let's take this no DPI one. So it's 2528 by 1432, and there it's 2528 by 1432. Let's take the DPI awareness one and drag it over into this other monitor, and you notice that it's increased in size slightly. Okay, so that's it adjusting to the fact that this other monitor actually has a much lower DPI setting on it. And then we bring it back, and it's gone back to its original size. Okay? So that's the standard PowerBuilder behavior. What I'm doing here, though, is and we covered it in the slides, is I've got code in the other event that's looking for the WM DPI changed notice. And when I get that notice, I then determine from the response I got with that message, where it tells me what it thinks the ideal size of the window is. I pull that off, and then I resize the window to that size. And then, of course, I've got resize logic that resizes all the controls when the window control changes size, or the window changes size. So I'm going to turn that feature on and then drag it over to this window. And notice we got a little bit different size. And notice my resize logic is also a little messed up because I've got my control right here in the middle of some other controls. But so that's how you can, now this is used at your own risk. This isn't something that Appian necessarily supports. what Appian supports, they don't necessarily even support dragging the windows back and forth between two different DPI monitors. What they're supporting is, let me put these over here on this window, close them down, and then reopen them. And then with PowerBuilder 2025, they will open on the window they were last on. So this is those two windows, either adjusting or not adjusting for the lower resolution of this particular monitor. So anyway, that is the DPI awareness enhancement. Okay, so that was a demo of supporting high DPI. The next one we're going to look at is connecting to PostgreSQL versus ADO.NET. So when you go to create a profile, an ADO.NET profile, click on the drop-down. You'll notice not only is there ODBC, Oracle, and SQL Server, as there have been in earlier versions of PowerBuilder, now we have an option for PostgreSQL as well. What they're using under the covers is an open source library called NPG-SQL. It's a highly recommended ADO.NET driver for PostgreSQL. It's one that Microsoft recommends if you're going to use PostgreSQL in Azure. And what this does, one of the big things it does, is that there are a whole lot of options available in the Postgres connection that are exposed in the ADO.NET driver, which aren't available in the ODBC driver. And so if you go into the database profile and go to the driver specific tab, you'll see all of these options. And there's a lot. There's the security, encryption, connection pooling, timeouts, keep alive. There's some performance features, and what may be of utmost importance to some people, the ability to do failover and load balancing. So none of that's available that I know of through the ODBC driver. So that's one important change here. The other one, not that necessarily is implemented yet, but this really opens up the ability for Appian engineers to improve the support for stored procedures and functions in future releases. The ODBC drivers is quite limiting in that regard, and the ADO.NET driver is much more amenable to allowing them to make changes in that area. So let's go ahead and take a look at using Postgres with the ADO.NET driver. Okay, so what I've got here, I've got two copies of PowerBuilder 2025 running. The one here on top, in the bottom right-hand corner, is connected to Postgres using the new ADO.NET driver. Not that the ADO.NET driver is new, but the ability to connect to Postgres through it is new. And then over here in the top left is the database painter connected to Postgres through ODBC. And not seeing a whole lot of differences here, meaning you get the same functionality with both. I'm able to click on a function and see the syntax of the stored procedure, stored function in the database painter. Works fine. This is interacting with the data from the database, and that's working fine. But the only real difference I see here is in the Explorer. Notice here it's actually with ODBC, it's actually showing you a little bit more information. Not that it's particularly useful. We've got the driver information and the groups and the users. So those three folders appear with the ODBC connection. They don't appear here with the ADO.NET connection. I'm not sure that there's anything other than users that I would particularly be interested in over here, but that is the difference. Okay, next thing we're going to look at, I'll close one of these and run the sample code here in the other one. I want to show you what's going on here first. Okay, so what I'm doing here is there's an option here to connect with ODBC to PostgreSQL. So I disconnect in case we're already connected with the ADO.NET, then connect with ODBC. And then this one does the same thing with ADO.NET. Okay. And then I've got an entrans here. This is a custom object of type transaction. And in it, I have a local function, local external function declared for stored function in the database. And I actually got several of them there. And then in the application object, I have SQL CA point, so it's set up to be created from that entrans. So that means I can call those stored procedures as a method on SQL CA. So that's what I'm doing in this script. And then I have a stored procedure-based data window, and I'm calling that from this script. And then in this script, I'm loading a different data window that has identity column, and I'm doing an insert into it and then an update. And then lastly, I'm doing some dynamic SQL, particularly format 3 dynamic SQL call. And we're going to check, the reason I'm doing all that is just to make sure that all this works with both drivers, that there isn't some missing functionality in the ADO.NET driver. So let's go ahead and run this. And so I'm going to connect via ODBC first. I can do an RPC func call. That works fine. I do retrieve the stored procedure, data window. Now what this did, it automatically created this top row here and saved it to the database. So that's an identity column being done. And then there's the dynamic SQL call being done. So all that works with ADO.NET. Let's try this, with ODBC. Now we're going to connect with ADO.NET. We do the RPC func call. That works great. Stored procedure update call. That works great. I am having this issue with the data window identity column. Notice it actually created the row, but it throws a spurious error message when I do the update. So not sure what that's about. And of course, PowerBuilder 2025 is still in beta. So I have reported that, and hopefully by GA, they will have that resolved. And then finally, there's the dynamic SQL. So everything with the exception of a spurious error message from the identity column is the same. We get the same functionality with ODBC and ADO.NET. So you might be asking at that point, why bother? But as I pointed out in the slides, we do get some new options when we're using the ADO.NET driver. So let's go take a look at specifically the driver information, driver-specific tab here. So we have keep alive, and there's more keep alive down here. There's some pooling. We get to do database pooling. There's some options here for more advanced security, and there's some information here about controlling the timeouts. None of that I'm aware of is available through the ODBC driver. So that is an advantage of the ADO.NET driver. The other advantage, like I discussed in the slides, is the fact that it will open up better support for stored procedures. So that's the ADO.NET PostgreSQL driver. Okay, so that was looking at using the ADO.NET driver with PostgreSQL. Now we're going to look at upgrading to .NET 8 and removing .NET Framework. So in 2025, all the features that were originally coded to work with .NET 8 have been upgraded to work with .NET 6 have been upgraded to work with .NET 8. If you do not have .NET 8 on your machine, the PowerBuilder installer will install it for you. Note that the XL12 support that used to require the .NET Framework 4.8 and now uses .NET 8.0 as well. So now we removed the dependency on the .NET Framework, and it's now all .NET 8.0. However, The following features still require .NET Framework 4.8. The PowerBuilder Runtime Packager, so that's more of an issue for you, not your end users. And the DataWindow Blob Control. Now, that one would impact your end users. So if you're using DataWindow Blob, they would still have to have the .NET Framework 4.8 installed. Your end users, that is. The SMTP client now supports a number of other authentication types, including NTLM, plain, and XO Auth 2. In themes, there's been some changes so that we can control the background color of detail, summary, and footer bands for crosstab and grid data windows, as well as the background color of head, detail, summary, and footer bands for freeform, group, NUp, tabular, and tree view data windows. So these are the new options that are available in the theme JSON file so that you can control the theming of those elements. And also the border color of the drop-down data window, there's the option there. The tab view, the enhancement here is now can now be enabled and disabled at runtime. So you can do it through a script, as I'm doing here. And I've actually got a demo of showing this happening. Yeah, and so here's that demo. Let's take a look at the changes to the tab view. So we're going to look at the tabbed view. Now, this isn't necessarily the best place to put code that does something like this, but I've put it in the menu. And so I have a menu item here that is checked or unchecked. And then if it's checked, then I will turn off the tab view on the MDI frame and arrange the sheets using Cascade. If it is checked, I will turn the tab view on and then maximize all the tab sheets. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here's the frame. Open up another sheets here. Now we're starting off in non-docked. But if we go here, boom, now we're in docked view. And then if we go back here to the menu and turn that back off, then we're back in the normal MDI. So, I mean, it gives your users an opportunity to choose the way they want to have it look. If they want to go standard MDI frame, there you go. If they like tabbed view better, there you go. All right. So that's the tabbed view. Okay, so that was the changes to the tab view. Next thing we're going to look at is data window enhancements. So two primary ones. One is a change to the way that the data window painter handles update properties when you make a change to the select statement. What used to happen, more times than I ever care to prefer, is that you would go in and make a minor change to a database SQL statement, and when you came out of the painter, it would tell you it just threw away your update properties. It finally no longer does that. It will retain the update properties if possible. And then there's also a new data window save as feature, which allows you to save the data window format. In other words, you can save it to Excel, and if you've got total lines, it will save out total lines. Now, if you're using, like if you got a summary band with summary columns in it, and those are done using functions, obviously, the Excel that you generate, I just want to, disclaimer up front, it stores out the values. It does not attempt to store out the functions that are used to generate those values. So the Excel spreadsheet you get will just have the values in the summary line. If you want to, tweak it to actually have the sum function operating on the columns above it, you're going to have to do that manually after the export's done. So here's going to be a demo of the data window enhancements. So we're going to look at two of the data window changes here. First one, it has to do with the update specifications. So I'm going to look at the data source for this data window. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a column. When I go back, I'm going to get a warning message. Now, normally in previous versions of PowerBuilder, what this warning message was telling you is that the update specifications have been completely thrown away and that you needed to reprovide them. But if we go and look now, all it's doing, all that message was doing was telling me there was a change to the update specifications. Specifically that column that is no longer in the data window is no longer part of the update specifications. Everything else was maintained. So I can go back now into the data source again. I can add that column back. And this time when I go back, no message at all. That's because there was no reason to change the update specifications automatically. And I can go in now and manually add that column back in. But once again, we didn't lose our update specifications just because we changed the data source. So that's one of the big changes. And I'm not going to save that modified data window, but let's take a look at that data window. For this next enhancement, it's the save displayed data as. And so I've thrown a few things in here. I've got the ID number and the title of some books. I've got a count field in the summary band and the number and a text that says total number of books. I've got a footer. The footer says this is just text in the footer band. And I've got a page computation here, which probably doesn't make sense in a footer. Probably should have been maybe in the summary or something. But anyway, that's where I put it. So if we run this, so that's what it looks like. Here's the IDs. Here's the text. There's the count of the books. There's the text that says total books. Here's your page number. 1 of 2, 2 of 2, and then the text in the footer band. Now we do save display data as, and we go out to that directory, and there's the Excel file that just got created. And I don't have Excel on here, I have OpenOffice, but anyway, that still works. When we open up that file, what we're going to see is not only was the data saved, here's my text, total books. It's not part of the data. It's part of the display. It's part of the summary band of the data window. Here's that computed column. Now notice that what didn't get saved was a formula here. That just says 15. So you're not going to get the formulas out. Notice page 2 of 2. That's just text. So you're not, just because you put formulas in the data window doesn't mean you get formulas in the output. But you do get output that includes information other than the data now. You get information that is displayed on the data window. So that's the two changes. The changes in update specifications were, more like the fact that the update specifications don't get thrown away now. And then the change to the data window that allows us to save the data window the way it's displayed rather than just the data. Okay. That's the data window enhancements. Let's move on. We've got source control enhancements. Okay, so this I think is big. So what PowerSoft did in their wisdom, if you call it that, is if you change an argument on a method in an object, it would, let's say you've got functions A, B, C, D, and you go in and you change the arguments on method B, it would take method B out of the source code at that point and move it down to the bottom. So now it's methods A, C, D, B. Well, the problem with that is that when you start working with source control systems like Git, that looks like a huge change rather than just the change of an argument. And what that would cause, it would cause merge conflicts in the source control system because it looked like all these huge changes were going on that weren't really major changes. And so here's an example, and I will show this as well in the demo. So I had functions 1, 2, 3. What I did is I went into, and this is a diff for the change. I went in, I just added an argument to function 1. So this is what PowerBuilder does up through PowerBuilder 2022. It removed that function from there, put it at the bottom with the argument. Also, this is in the prototypes. And then also down here in the actual code, it's removed it from here, put it down at the bottom, and there it is with the new argument. It's a minor change, and it results in huge changes in the source code. And it really causes a problem with when you're working with other developers and they happen to be working on the same object. This is the way PowerBuilder 2025 handled that change. In this case, I modified function 2. I added the argument. Notice that all that has happened, this line was removed, this line was added. And technically, I mean, maybe it's a problem with the diff, but it didn't even really need to do that. I just needed to show that the argument was added. And same thing down here. Here's the function as the way it was before. Here's the function as it is now with the argument, which I'm not actually doing anything with. But the important thing to know is that the changes that are actually in the source code are the same as the changes I actually made. They're not this huge set of changes that I really didn't actually make. So this, so if I'm another developer and I made changes to function 3, chances are that the merge that happens when we both put in our changes, the source control tool looks at them and says, did these guys overwrite the same area of code? And if it says no, it just incorporates both changes. And now it's going to be able to do that because of, you don't get this function rearrangement that was really causing havoc. On the create new branch, there's an enhancement now. Because what you used to have to do, you create a new branch, and then you would have to say, now I want to switch to that branch as a separate operation. Now there's a checkbox that says, I want to create this new branch and switch to it in a single operation. Same thing when we do a switch branch. If I just said I want to switch to a branch, that would, let's say it's a remote branch, and that remote branch does not exist on my local, I can say I want to create a new branch as well. So what you used to have to do is if there was a branch on the remote that you wanted to use, you used to have to do a create new branch first and then do the switch. Now you can do it in a single operation. And then finally, there is now a get merge operation available on the right click menu in the system tree. So let's go ahead and take a look at all that in operation. So we're going to look at the source control enhancements now. First thing I want to get to, now I've got PowerBuilder 2025 and 2022 running here. Let's take a look at 2022 first. So I have an object here, and if we go to edit source and look at the way the source file is created, it's got the functions in their their alphabetical order, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go in and take one of those functions other than number 3. Let's take a number 1 here, and I'm going to add an argument to it. Let's go look and see what PowerBuilder 2022 did. Notice the function order changed. It's now 231, 231. That plays havoc when a source control system is trying to do a merge, because that was a lot bigger change than I actually did. All I did was add an argument to one function. It should not have triggered that much code change. There's 2025. Let's take a look at the source code there. Once again, the functions are 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. Let's go do the same thing. Let's go to function 1. In this case, this has an argument, so I'm going to delete it, that argument. Say yes, save. Now let's see what PowerBuilder 2025 did. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The order of the functions has not changed, which means that when a diff is done on this, the only thing that you're going to see in the diff is the fact there's no argument here and no argument there. And so the chances of a merge conflict being inadvertently triggered when it shouldn't be is greatly reduced. So that's one of the new features here. We'll stay in 2025. We'll look at creating a branch. Now I have the master branch down here in my local repo. There's 2 more branches up on the remote server. I say create branch. I indicate that I want to switch to, let's say, branch A, and it copied the branch name up into the above, and that's the default for the new branch is going to be created locally. Normally I try to keep those the same. But here's the other feature, switch to new branch. Now, normally when you did this in PowerBuilder 2022, you do the create branch, and then you'd have to go back separately and do a switch branch. Now, we've created the branch, and we've switched to it. Okay? Let's take a look at switch branch, sort of the same thing. There's another branch up there called B on the origin. I'm going to create the new branch as I switch. Voila, I'm done. That used to be, once again, 2 separate operations. You'd have to create it first and then switch to it. Now you can do it in a single operation. And sure enough, we are on branch B. The last option I'd show you there is now we have Git merge available on the right menu pop-up as well. So that's our source control enhancements for PowerBuilder 2025. Okay, so that was the source control enhancements. Now we're going to move on to PDF Builder enhancements. And there's pretty much 2 enhancements here. One is creating form objects, creating fillable forms, in other words, fillable PDF forms. And the other one is being able to import a PDF blob into a PDF document. And the thing I'll point out is we actually had the ability in PowerBuilder 2022 to create PowerBuilder PDF forms. The thing is, though, it's done not through the PDF builder, but through the rich text edit control. If you build a form in the rich text edit control and then save it to a PDF file, it's a fillable form. But it's kind of the non-intuitive way to do it. So now we get the intuitive way to do it. If we want to build PDF, including a PDF form, we use the PDF builder. So there's a number of different options here: the checkbox, combo box, a list box, push button, radio button, and text fields. There are also, let me go back and just show that. So this is the sample code I have, and I will demo this where we create a fillable form, not a particularly complicated fillable form, but a fillable form nonetheless. So here's where I'm creating the checkbox. Here's where I'm setting the properties for it, and then including it right there. And one line I didn't highlight, including it into the form. So in addition to those 6 different form fields, there's the PDF form field group. So you can group your form fields into this PDF form field group. And there's also a PDF form field push button. And that can be associated with PDF actions. And there's 3 actions in particular. There's PDF action JavaScript, which will run a JavaScript file. There's a PDF action named, which will trigger one of the menu items on the PDF viewer. And then there's the PDF action reset form, which resets the form fields. So, you have the user filling out a form, and for whatever reason they want to reset it, you can give them a button that will reset all the fields back to having no values. The other option is to import a blob, a PDF that's in a blob, into a PDF document. Now, I'm showing a sample here where I just read a PDF file into a blob and then import it into a PDF document. That's a trivial example. It shows you how you can do it. In practice, this blob might be coming from a database or it might be coming from a web service. So that's why we want the ability to import it directly into the PDF document. we don't want to have to take this blob that we got from someplace other than a file and then create a file just so we can read it. We want to be able to use that blob directly, and that's what we now have the capability to do. So here's the demo of the PDF Builder enhancements. So now we're going to look at the PDF Builder enhancements. So as I mentioned in the slides, there are two of them, creating a PDF form and then importing a PDF blob into a PDF document. Let's take a look at the code here for creating a PDF form. So here's the important thing. We can do a PDF checkbox now, and the other types that I mentioned in the slides. You can put those controls within a group. You can have actions on the PDF button. And then here's where I'm setting some properties. That's on the PDF text. This is on the PDF checkbox. I'm adding both of those to the page, and then adding the page to the document, and then saving it out. So that's what that looks like. And before I actually show that demo here, we'll look at the code for importing a blob into a PDF file. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just for the demonstration purposes, I'm just grabbing a local file, reading it into a blob, and then importing that into a PDF document. That you wouldn't do that in practice because you can import the PDF file directly. What I'm showing here, though, is that blob could be coming from a REST service. It could be coming from the database. What we're trying to avoid is taking blobs that we get through, services such as that, the database or REST service. And instead of having to save it to a local temp file and then reading it, now we can just import it directly. So let's go ahead and take a look at that running. I'm going to create a PDF form, and this is a web browser. I'm loading it into the web browser. So there is a checkbox, and sure enough, I can check it and uncheck it. So that's a PDF form. Now, you used to be able to do this, or you still can do this using the rich text edit control, but it just makes a lot more sense to do it here with the PDF Builder. The PDF Builder does provide a lot more functionality, such as the actions and the group boxes. And then this is importing the PDF blob into a document. So that's just a blank document that I imported, in this case, a file too, but the important point was it was a blob I was able to import into the PDF document. So that's the two enhancements to the PDF Builder. Okay, so that was the PDF Builder. Let's move on. There's now better support for multiple display monitors. So for example, this is in the IDE, and the window on the right is my secondary monitor. The window on the left is my primary monitor. I opened up the PowerBuilder IDE, and then I moved it to the second monitor. And then I opened up a dialog. This would be the new dialog. And notice what happened. It opened up back on the primary monitor, not in front of the IDE. That's a little disconcerting. This is the way it happens in PowerBuilder 2025. If the IDE is on the second monitor or the third monitor or whatever monitor it's on, and you open up a dialog within the IDE, it opens up within the IDE. It just kind of makes sense. So the PowerBuilder IDE will remember which window it was opened on last, which monitor was opened on last, and when you reopen the IDE, it will reopen on that monitor. Also, compiled PowerBuilder applications will also remember which monitor they were opened on last, and will also reopen on that monitor when they're reopened. And then now the environmental object has two new properties. So it's screen X and screen Y. This is a little complicated because what PowerBuilder doesn't see two monitors. PowerBuilder sees a display area of a certain size. It's kind of like in the, let me go back a couple slides because you can see that right there. This is kind of how PowerBuilder sees the monitors. It doesn't see it doesn't really see two monitors. It sees this huge display area. And so what this screen X and screen Y does, it tells you where the application is at. And if you know the width of each of the monitors, you can look at the screen X and screen Y and say, oh, my monitor, my window is, well, let's say this right here is the application running. You take the X and Y for this application here, and you look to see where it's, if the X and Y are within the range of the first monitor, or if they're within the range of the second monitor, and that tells you what screen you're on. Okay, I hope I explained that without confusing everybody. So let's go ahead and take a look at a live example of using multiple display monitors. So we're going to look at dual monitor support here. The first thing we're going to do is look at what the IDE does. So what I did earlier is I opened up PowerBuilder 2025 and moved it to my second monitor, and now I'm opening it again. Notice splash screen came up on the second monitor. The IDE comes up on the second monitor. It remembered what monitor it was on last and reopened in that same monitor. And now I'm going to do like a file, new dialog, and it opens up on the second monitor. So it's aware of where the IDE is at. It's doing everything on the monitor that the IDE was last on. I did the same thing with PowerBuilder 2022. Let's see what happens here. Splash screen came up on the left, but I noticed that PowerBuilder 2022 did remember that it was on the second monitor, at least for the IDE opening. But look what happens when I do a file new. Back on the first monitor. Yeah, so somewhat there, but not completely there. Same thing with applications. So this is a PowerBuilder 2022 application. I'm going to open it up. It comes up on the primary monitor. I'm going to move it to the secondary monitor. I'm going to close it. I'm going to open it back up again. And it opens back up on the primary monitor. It has no idea where it was last at. So that's a PowerBuilder 2022 application. This is a PowerBuilder 2025 application. And it opened up on the second monitor because that's the last place I used it. I'm going to move it back to the first monitor, close it, reopen it. It's back on the first monitor, close it, reopen it, back on the second monitor. Okay? So, yeah, multi-monitor aware. I think that's it. All right? Back to the slides. Oh, wait, there is one other last thing I wanted to show, and that's this X and Y attributes. And I realized when I was talking in the slides, and I may have made it sound like the X and Y attributes are constantly updated as the window's moving, and that's not actually true. So, because that would make it difficult to figure out what monitor your window is on. So let's go ahead and run this guy. And notice the X value, 1536. Notice as I move this, it's not changing. Not until I get to the first monitor when it goes to 0. And it stays 0 all the time it's on that monitor. So when you're examining these attributes, you don't have to go, oh, well, is it 3/4 of the way through the monitor? It's not. You're going to get a dramatic increase in the value, and it's going to stay that value until you move off onto the third monitor. And the Y, same thing with the Y. If you move the Y upward, it's going to get a significant increase that lets you know that you're on a different monitor. Okay. So hopefully that made sense. And now let's get back to the slides. Okay, so that was support for multiple display monitors. The last thing we're going to look at is the placeholder property for edit mask and multi-line edit. Now, the thing I'll point out, with an edit mask, you have different formats. The placeholder for the edit mask only works with string. So you notice this is a single line edit, and that is the placeholder. That placeholder has been supported in earlier versions of PowerBuilder. So that's not new. I'm just showing you there as an example. Here's a string edit mask, and there's the placeholder for that. But here's a date edit mask, a number edit mask, and a time edit mask, and those do not support the placeholders. It only works for the string edit mask. And then finally, here's the multi-line edit, and it also has now the placeholder. And maybe I mean, you can see what's going on there, but just to explain it more directly, the placeholder is text that appears in the control, but isn't actually text. So there's no text here that says single line edit or edit mask or multi-line edit. That's just what appears there until the user starts typing in a value, and then whatever they type in it shows instead. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at a demo of those. That screenshot I showed was actually from my demo, so we're going to take a look at that. So let's take a look at the placeholder. So this is the single line edit, and you notice the placeholder property. Now this was existing in PowerBuilder 2022. The difference here now is that if we go to the edit mask, we notice that there's a placeholder property now here as well that we put the edit mask in, and the multi-line edit has the placeholder. And as I pointed out in the slides, the string edit mask has the placeholder, but so does the date, the numeric, and the time. But those, even though you put something in that value, it doesn't work. The only one it actually works for is for the string edit mask. So we're not seeing anything here in the editor. I'm waiting to see if it previews. Actually, it doesn't. Okay, there it goes. So now we actually seen it in the preview, although not consistently. Let's go ahead and run it. I think it's going to work better when we actually run it. Not sure what I changed, but here we go. Okay, that's working better. You notice that whenever the control has focus, because that's not actually text in the control, so whenever the control has focus, the placeholder goes away, and then it reappears as long as there's no text in the control. The placeholder reappears. But if I put text there, okay, now it no longer displays. And then if I remove the text, meanwhile, these, like I said, date, numeric, time, the other edit masks, the placeholder property has no effect at all. It's just for the single line edit, which existed in PowerBuilder 2022, now the string edit mask in 2025, and the multi-line edit mask in 2025. Okay, so that was the placeholder property for edit mask and multi-line edit. I fibbed a little bit. I said this is the last thing we were going to look at. That was the last enhancement we're going to look at. What we're going to look at now is installer changes, and then we're going to look at deprecated and obsolete features. So installer changes, one of the things that's going to happen with the installer is it's only going to give you certain options. It'll be the versions of PowerBuilder that have not reached their end of support. So you'll see 2019 R3, 2022 the original GA, R2 and R3, and you'll see 2025. You won't see any of the 2017 versions. You won't see the earlier versions of 2019. 2019 is, I believe, is a LTS version, long-term support. It doesn't mean that you can't get them. It just means you can't get them through the PowerBuilder installer. There'll be a dedicated page on the Appian website, Download Center, for providing offline installer links for the other versions that have reached their end of life, if for some reason you wanted to use them. The installer UI has also been updated. You no longer install Snap Develop through the PowerBuilder installer. If you want Snap Develop, you go to the Snap Develop website, and you can download Snap Develop from there. There is a new .NET Data Store project that I cover in a separate session, and it shows up now along with the other PowerBuilder programs. And then their PowerScript Migrator is no longer listed on the installer because it has been discontinued. Speaking of discontinued, the discontinued and obsolete features. And as I mentioned, the PowerScript Migrator, it has been completely removed from the product. That's what discontinued means, completely removed. Obsolete means it's still available in the product, but it could be discontinued at any point. So you can still use the MSS CCI interface for source control, but at your own risk. You really, really, really should be moving to Git or Subversion at this point, preferably Git. .NET 6.0 is gone. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And I've always heard that when you're teaching, you should tell people what you're about to tell them. You should tell it to them, and you should recap what they've learned. So we're going to recap here. What did we talk about? We talked about being able to take the PBC command line options and use them with PBAutoBuild. We talked about supporting high DPI. We talked about using the ADO.NET driver with PostgreSQL. We talked about how PowerBuilder 2025 now uses .NET 8 rather than .NET 6 and has largely removed the dependency on the .NET framework. We've talked about the SMTP client supporting various authentication types, minor changes to the theming, the tab view enhancement, data window enhancements, the save as and no longer thrown away object update properties. We looked at the source control enhancements, including the merge and, finally, the ability to avoid merge conflicts because PowerBuilder no longer rearranges the source code on you. We talked about the PDF builder enhancement, particularly PDF forms and being able to use PDF blob. We talked about the support for multiple display monitors, and at least as feature-wise, the last one here is the placeholder property for edit mask and multi-line edit. Then we talked about the changes to the installer and discontinued and obsolete features. So before we go, I just wanted to remind you or make you aware of, if you were not aware of it, community.appian.com. That's the developer hangout area for PowerBuilder developers. Has a Q&A section, has tech articles, has blog articles. What I don't see listed here is it has an area where you can post code samples that you want to share with other people, and you can go in there and see these other code samples, and you can download them and use them. So just a whole wealth of resources there on community.appian.com. Also, Appian has a Facebook account, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. So if you want to stay in touch with Appian, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. With that, thank you. And we move to questions and answers now. So before we go, I just wanted to remind you or make you aware of, if you were not aware of it, community.appian.com. That's the developer hangout area for PowerBuilder developers. Has a Q&A section, has tech articles, has blog articles. What I don't see listed here is this has an area where you can post code samples that you want to share with other people, and you can go in there and see these other code samples, and you can download them and use them. So just a whole wealth of resources there on community.appian.com. Also, Appian has a Facebook account, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. So if you want to stay in touch with Appian, there's a whole bunch of ways to do it. With that, thank you. And we move to questions and answers now.